Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
But Minnesota transforms their organization, their front office. They have Tim Connelly is one of the most respected executives in this league. Built this team in Denver, drafted Nikola Jokic with the 41st pick, and put a team around them that, when healthy, I think everybody feels is a real contender in the West. But this is a significant day for the Minnesota franchise. They're a minority ownership group that's going to take over sometime in 2023, led by Mark Lowry, really were the driving forces, the recruiters in this.
Yeah. You know, this has just been in my head for 2 straight days.
Oh, hold on.
That's right.
Where's the flag?
Oh, look who's got a flag himself. No.
Oh, he got the flag.
That's right. The Tim Connelly flag.
I got the pennant, baby. It's
I love
resting.
it.
Shoes off.
Resting for the option.
Shoes off. Game's over. Season's
Shoes
over
off.
already.
Shoes
for
off.
Dex. Amazing.
Shoes
Oh,
off.
man.
Shoes
Oh,
off for
boy.
Connelly.
Oh, boy, I'm glad I'm not there.
Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, speculation, therapy as needed. And Judd, you kind of floated this yesterday as we were going through our, this is like the 3rd Tim Connelly episode we've done this week.
Yep.
We did one on Monday that was, looks like this is going to happen. Then yesterday it was, this happened. And now it's, what's his to-do list? Mm-hmm. If you're Tim Connelly, and apparently he was in town, I'm sure he was, he was in Mankato this weekend, and then maybe he had to sign something with HR or something, I don't know, on Monday, but he was watching a workout of some kind.
That's according to our guy Doogie, and his scoopage was that there was some workouts going on, I think at Target Center or Mayo Clinic Square yesterday, and that Tim Connelly was there watching. So
good. Already laying his eyes on this playoff roster. How can they make a run to the top half of the Western Conference
Already
playoff
a grinding
bracket? So, and then we found out yesterday too, and this is relevant for this summer, Karl-Anthony Towns, 3rd team All-NBA after a very productive regular season. And that makes him eligible this summer for a Supermax extension that would kick in 2024. But you have to make the decision this summer. And that would be a 4-year, $211 million extension that would make him one of the 5 highest paid players in the NBA as of now. I think there's going to be a couple other guys that are eligible too, but it would make him one of the 5 or 6 highest paid players in 2 years from now. So you're Tim Connelly, and you sit down at your desk here. I don't know if, if he's a clutter guy, if he's got one of those desk calendars, if he likes to keep it clear. But you sit down at your desk, and you start to map out your most important things to do starting, let's say, once the NBA Finals are over. What does that list start to look like for you?
Well, I think the obvious top one is Cat. Now, I think that you do that deal, but it's still a huge financial and franchise decision, right? So I think that's atop the list, because you are going to be making a decision that's going to, even with a salary cap increasing by the year or by the season, it's going to be impacting your franchise. And look, there is probably a conversation to be had internally about the fact that this guy just had some treatments done that aren't exactly the norm. So there are definite long-term concerns about his health, his size. Big guys do break down eventually. Now, I do think it gets done, but that's one atop my list. 2 is also very clear, I think. D'Angelo Russell, his future. There's a very important decision to be made fairly soon about him. Now, to me, that one, if you want to call it obvious, it's I part ways. That one to me is not, oh yeah, you just do that deal too because Cat likes him, and you know what? No. I saw enough from D'Angelo Russell throughout the course of the season to see the good and the bad to me, especially in the playoffs, you guys, outweighed the good. So that is a clear cut 2. So now we're at 2. And then 3 is where it gets, I think, probably a lot more fun and interesting, because now if you're Tim Connelly and you are inheriting a roster that has some really nice components at the top, you probably have to decide, okay, Chris Finch likes these guys. I'll talk to Finch, but it's not a given that everybody else stays. For instance, in Denver, Connelly traded Malik Beasley. He traded Vanderbilt. Now, I'm not saying he does the same exact thing here, but the point is he once saw those guys. And I think Beasley that we see now is basically the same guy from his time with Connelly before. So like that
he just plays a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, he plays a lot more, but I'm just saying, I think in the case of Vanderbilt, you could probably say he has achieved to be a better player than Connelly probably expected. Beasley, you'd say he traded him before. He very well could trade him again. But I think, Phil, that's where the to-do list gets to be fun, because I'd be very surprised if training camp starts and everything is the same.
Yeah, and then there's the draft too. The Wolves have the 19th pick. Yep. Is that a pick that are they looking to trade up, trade back? Are they looking to trade the pick? There's all sorts of things draft related too. And I think Connelly's track record, not really having top picks. He's Jamal Murray, I think, was the 7th overall pick in Denver, and then they picked 7th another time. But they've built that roster through mid, late first round picks and second round picks. Obviously, if they don't hit Nikola Jokic in the second round, then I don't think it's a stretch to say that Tim Connelly isn't making $40 million over 5 years to be the Timberwolves president of basketball operations. It's amazing how that one second round pick that he was part of, he wasn't the trigger man on the pick itself, I don't think, because he wasn't the Pobo at the time. But
right.
On Karl-Anthony Towns, so you definitely have to sign him to the extension. There's really no now if you then decide to trade him at some point, that's a whole other conversation, because I think there are major question marks about what happens to him mentally and just the way that he kind of disappears or takes himself out of these big games. I mean, he showed up in, let's face it, 50% basically of their playoff and play-in games, and he was actively sabotaging their chances to win in the other games. And he's about to be one of the 5 highest-paid players in the NBA if he signs this 4-year, $211 million contract, which he will if you offer it to him. So I definitely have questions about his ability to produce at that level in a salary cap league. And yes, it's a soft cap, and you can go into the luxury tax if you want to. And I think Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez might be the type of dudes that once they take full control of the team, may be more willing to splash around in the luxury tax than Glenn Taylor has been. So all those things are to be seen. So I have questions about Cat at that level, and I have questions about his age and his current injury situation. That Supermax starts when he's 29 years old. He's 20, or it'll be his age 29 season. I believe he'll be 28, turning 29. But it's a Supermax that takes him through the last 2 years of his 20s and then into the first 2 or 3 years of his 30s. So whatever you think about his health situation now, that Supermax contract doesn't kick in for 2 more years. He has 2 more years left on his current contract.
How concerned are you about the procedures he had? Because I will say this, they're not like major procedures, but they usually hint at upcoming problems, and it's certainly not a simple cleanup. If it's a simple cleanup, it might not be ideal, but it's very, very common. Yeah. But when we're talking about, injections basically, and a man of that size, and he does, he pounds a lot. So like, it's not shocking, but how concerned, if you're Tim Connelly, Phil, are you right now about the fact that while you want to do this deal, you might be dealing with a ticking time bomb of a player here in some ways?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be a platelet-rich plasma therapy expert here, which is the name of the procedure. And he had multiple procedures, but Kobe Bryant, I think, kind of brought this to the mainstream almost 10 years ago, and he was in his 30s. And it was a way to try and it's not surgery, it's a therapy, and I'm not going to pretend to know all the intricate details, but it was supposed to be an alternate procedure that wasn't some sort of invasive cut your knee open. He didn't want to go down the traditional path. And you could say, well, maybe it extended Kobe's career by a few years, but Kobe then also had Achilles tendon tear a couple years later, and it was a procedure that took place when he felt like his body was breaking down. And he wasn't 7 feet tall. He was a guard. I think when you're 7 feet tall, you're not meant to be playing 40 minutes a night for 80 games and just thumping up and down the court. It's hard. So that would be a concern. When Steph Curry signs a Supermax contract that takes him into age 33, which is kind of where he is right now, he's going to shoot till he's 40. Ray Allen shot till he was 40. Cat probably shoots till he's 40, but can you just park a 7-footer out there when he's 32 years old and has broken down knees? So these are I don't think any of these things are going to prevent me from saying yes to the 4 years, $211 million. But in terms of how you might proceed with a trade discussion in a year or two from now, I mean, these are all discussions that you have to be having, and these procedures definitely play. On the D'Lo front, this is probably the biggest one because I think the cat thing has a bunch of questions, but you do it and then you kind of figure it out later, right? Okay, you're in. We're going to try and smooth some of the edges out here, and we're going to try and get you to not freak out in some of these playoff games and be more like Jokic, right? On the D'Lo front, here's the problem with D'Lo. In his mind, and he's a max player right now, he thinks he's an elite combo guard, right? In his mind, he thinks he's in the Trae Young cat. I don't think he thinks he's Steph Curry, but like he thinks he's Trae Young. He thinks he's sort of diet Damian Lillard at the end of these games, just, taking contested shots. But he's not. He's more like dollar store Trae Young. He's not going to be the driving force for a winning team.
That hurts, dollar store.
It's true.
I said it hurts.
It's hard when you have these undersized guards. It's so hard unless they are Hall of Fame level players like Steph Curry and efficient offensive scorers. D'Lo shoots 40%.
Yeah.
And like 32% in the playoffs. And he takes as many shots as Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards statistically the last couple of years. I think he takes like 15, 16 shots a game. Cat's at like 17. Ant's at like 16 or something. So those three players should not be taking the same amount of shots. You need a point guard, and I don't think it can be D'Lo at this point because I think he has an idea of who he wants to be as a player. And if you're going to pay that much money for a point guard, it has to be an elite combo guard, like someone that can drive the offense. And I would even argue that these undersized guards that are the centerpiece of their teams, Ja Morant, Trae Young, it's hard to win at the highest level. This is a wing league when it comes. I'm not saying make the playoffs. You can make the playoffs with Devin Booker and Chris Paul, and you can make the finals with some of those guys. But if you want to really win at a top level, look at what's happening in the league right now. Let's take Steph Curry out of it because he is potentially on the Mount Rushmore of all-time great players. Boston, Miami, Dallas are the other three teams left in the playoffs. And the point guard is complementary on those teams. Now, you could argue that Luka is the point guard for Dallas. He's just a unicorn player that can pretty much do everything. But their actual point guard is Jalen Brunson, a really good player, but knows how to fade into the background and then knows how to step, okay, these next 10 minutes, it's on me because Luka's in foul trouble, and then I'll take over. But then at the end of the game, I'm back into my sort of complementary role. Marcus Smart for Boston. He's conceding to the two great wing players, specifically Jason Tatum on that team. And then Kyle Lowry with the Heat has become much more of a complementary player. He's setting up Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and those guys are shining. So I just think you need a point guard with more self-awareness who spends 2.5 hours setting up Cat and Ant to shine in these games, not looking for his at the end of a 3 for 14 shooting performance. I still got it, guys. I'm going to dribble into the paint and take a contested, fadeaway from 15 feet. I don't. So yeah, I'm looking at my options for D'Lo 100% starting today.
It just seems like, too, to your point of point guards being more complementary pieces, like you can get by, and big assumption, I guess, from me, but like you can get by with having a Tyus Jones, J-Mac, Patrick Beverly type of rotation. Don't forget Ballmaro. I know he was a first-round pick and still has probably his ways to crack into the rotation for the Wolves, but I feel like complementary pieces and just going it by committee with their point guards is the way to go. Like Ant needs his shots, Cat needs his shots. And if D'Lo is not making his shots at an effective rate, well, then that's just inefficient scoring, dude. Like we're back to an Andrew Wiggins dilemma where he's an inefficient scorer asking to be the 1 or 2 when really Wiggins, thriving in Golden State, is option 4 and it works for him.
Yep. At the end of the day, he shot 40%. You use the word efficiency. He had some great games. He had some great stretches. There was a month where he was maybe the best player on the team, and he brought better leadership qualities. But at the end of the day, he is an undersized player who shoots 40% and doesn't play great defense. Is he going to be anything other than that in his career? I don't know, man. If he was 21, I might say, yeah, let's let this play out.
Part of why I think you bring in a guy like Connelly too. Like, yes, it's great he can find guys in the second round, which a lot of Wolves executives have failed to do. But part of why you bring him in is to also sort out players from temptation players. And D'Lo is the ultimate temptress. He went from the Lakers to the Nets, who moved on very quickly to Golden State, now here. And I think what a guy like Gerson sees at the time, and I think this comes from being new, or just not really being able to navigate things correctly, is the temptation of, well, if we get that guy, we'll fix him. We'll be the place that he actually, like those 25 great games, that'll become 75. That'll become 50. Pick your games played that all of a sudden become fantastic. I think the Tim Conleys of the world, I hope, have been around long enough and are smart enough to see through that. And so you're interested more, I think, by this point in putting together a roster that fits together like a puzzle and works, as opposed to, well, if they're going to trade D'Lo, we'll fix him. And I think that's the problem. And that's where Golden State's genius. Wiggins there fits perfectly because of what Deck said. Like, if you put him back on this team tomorrow and are like, okay, he showed us some stuff now, it ain't going to work the same.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to have executives in sports who know how the pieces fit and aren't tempted by those who can't really be fixed. And D'Lo, to me, is right now in his career and life exactly who he is.
So there's another aspect of this too. If you could get to D'Lo and say, listen, man, all right, you've been on, because he was with Golden State for a minute too, you've been on 4 teams in 7 years in the NBA, and you have 1 year left on this contract, and it's not looking like you're going to be here for the next 5 years. So you're going to be working on your 5th team potentially in 8 or 9 years in the NBA. Or you could look in the mirror, have some self-awareness, and you could stop taking 15 shots per game at a 40% clip. Maybe you take 12 shots per game. Maybe you take 10 to 12 shots per game. And you look to get, and instead of just looking to take over some of these games in the fourth quarter off the back of a 3 for 11 performance, you are solely looking to facilitate. And it'll be for less money. We're not paying you $31 million a year. But something in the $18 to $20 million range, maybe that's more fair.
Yep.
How would that conversation land with him? I don't know. My guess is him and his agent are still in the mode of, listen, we can still find a top 10, a team to view us as a top 10 point guard here. But if you went to him and said, we need something different out of you, man. Like, this is Ant's time to shine. So we need Ant to go from 16 to 20 shots, and those 4 shots have to come out of your pocket, and you have to facilitate for Cat and Ant. Do you think he'd be receptive to that? And would you be interested in D'Lo beyond this upcoming season at a reduced salary?
No and no. First of all, if he was receptive, here's the problem. It would last a month. And it might start to work. And he'd knock down more shots and find success. But because he is who he is, he'd say, oh, hold on a second here. I've unlocked something. Let me go back to being the guy that I was, because I can be more productive. There were, when you get to watch a guy play on a nightly basis, it really, you get the idea of, oh, this guy can change, or he ain't going to change. And in my opinion, after watching him, the thing that really stuck out to me as far as his personality goes too, because when things are going well, like, he's trying to coach guys up. Like, he tries to help. But the thing that really was a red flag was, I think it was towards the end of the regular season, and he was having a really bad game, and he just sort of went off and sulked. That's a red flag, because that's who you are. Like, when you're going well, that is, optimum D'Lo. This is fantastic. Everyone's happy with me. But when you start to struggle, especially in sports, to me, that's an indicator of your true personality, because, and by the way, that's the playoffs, because something's always going to go wrong. Mm-hmm. So I'm out on both, because I think if you went to him and he's like, okay, I agree to all that, you get a month of that, and then he's like, oh, I'm going pretty well, I want mine, and now we're back to that same. And to your point, Phil, there's no question. The guys that need the most complimentary help are Cat and Ant for sure. So I don't want to chance it that D'Lo's going to come back and be like, I'm fixed, I'm set to go. Ant can get his, but I'm going to get mine. Now we got a whole new problem. And I do believe that Ant, starting probably in the coming season, rightfully so, is going to become even more authoritative in how he sees himself, which I have no problem with.
Yeah.
But I don't want to start causing problems then because some knucklehead is taking shots he shouldn't be taking.
Yeah, it is not a big three. And right now, based on the way guys are paid and the way this thing started with D'Angelo and Cat, and then they drafted Edwards, it's so hard the way that it starts that way for then D'Lo to take a back seat to this 19, 20-year-old kid. Another thought here, too, real quick. So Dane Moore did a great job yesterday on Twitter laying out the Timberwolves salary cap situation over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Mm-hmm. And he had a take on this, and I think I'm in agreement with him that I want to run by you guys in a second, but a shout out real quick to the most comfortable underwear that we have ever strapped on in our lives. It's a Minnesota-based company. You can find them online, Chill Boys, and chillboys.com. What is one word to describe how Chill Boys are making you feel today, boys?
Liberated.
I'm gonna take a basketball max deal. I have a max deal with Chill Boys. Okay, I've given the super max. I've given the super max to my Chill Boys. I'd only wear them now. It's the only underwear I'm gonna wear ever.
I feel the way Andrew Wiggins felt as he was halfway through the air posterizing Luka a couple nights ago. That's how I feel.
Luka
right
was like, I
Posterizing.
gotta get out of the way. Luka was great.
Get out of the way of the Chill Boys.
Sorry, Drew. Didn't mean to get in your way.
So find them online, chillboys.com. Tell them Score North and or Purple Daily sent you. Also, a shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They've actually been supporting the Timberwolves for a long time as well. And you can find them online at federatedinsurance.com. So at Federated, their corporate culture is grounded in equity, integrity, teamwork, and respect. And these four cornerstones create the foundation that supports all interactions and decision-making. Find out more, like I said, at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. So our friend Dane Moore, and if you haven't checked it out, the Dane Moore NBA podcast, it's one of the best Timberwolves podcasts you're going to find, probably the best. The Wolves have basically zero cap space this summer, so they can't just go and sign a big free agent this summer because they already had D'Lo making $33 million or whatever it is, and Cat is on his first max contract. And, even Anthony Edwards makes $10 million as the number one overall pick. And then they signed a bunch of these sort of middle-ish level, like Beverly makes 13 and Beasley makes 15 or 16 or whatever it is. So they're pretty jammed up against the cap for this summer. If you fast forward then, so let's fast forward past next summer, that would be 2023, and into 2024. So we're going to speed ahead here. That's the Cat Supermax extension year one, starting at $47 million a year. Also that summer, Anthony Edwards' first max extension, assuming that happens, would kick in. It would be, I don't know, like $25, $30 million a year, somewhere in that range. And then you can also sign Jaden McDaniels to a new contract. I doubt that he gets a max unless he takes a huge step forward next year, but he's a really good player that Dane estimates he's going to make about $18 million a year. So no cap space right now. 2024, you're not going to have a lot of cap space because you're going to have all these contracts kicking in of players that you want around, right? So the window to have a ton of cap space, if they want it, is 2023, the summer of 2023, so a year from now, that they would have $50 to $60 million in cap space if they say goodbye to D'Lo either now or just let his contract ride out for one more year.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Beverly's off the books. Beasley's off the books. Now you're going to need to replace these guys with good draft picks or something.
Yep.
But you would have enough money in the summer of 2023 to sign a max player if you want to. And so what Dane is saying, and I agree, be careful adding money to the 2023 summer books this summer, unless
Right.
those are really impactful players that you are okay with, going into 2024-25. Now, of course, the next question is, okay, what potentially max caliber players are available next summer?
Mm-hmm.
And it's right now the list, and the list might change based on like some shorter term deals, but like LeBron at age 38 is out there. I think Dame Lillard is a free agent around that time, but these guys are also in their 30s. Kyrie Irving is going to be a free agent.
So this is interesting too, because if you could go out, if you do this and you go out and sign a max player next summer, technically, unless it's sped up, the change, the 40% that's going to go to A-Rod and Laurie can be paid as late as December of 2023. So I guess the question then becomes too, like, and what I'm curious about in this whole thing is this: who's paying the freight right now? Like with Connelly, is he being paid by the minority owners? So Glenn signed off. Like, we don't know that. Does Glenn have to pay him because he is at this point in time the majority owner of this team?
Well, the money comes out of their operating income as a franchise. It's not like coming out of Mark Lurie's checking account.
But I'm saying is Glenn has always traditionally been a little bit cheaper than it looks like these two, which is great. So who's calling the shots? Because
Glenn greenlit an expensive Pobo. I mean, that's what ultimately
that's
what
what
happened
I'm saying. So next summer, would Glenn have to, if the 40% is not done yet. So at that point in time, those two would have 40% equity in the team. Would Glenn have to greenlight completely the signing of a max player, or would he basically say, because I'm going to be out by December of this year, whatever you guys do is fine? I just think it's an interesting question about who's doing what, because we certainly have learned that Mark and A-Rod are extremely active for guys who don't have a majority stake in this team right now.
Well, and of course, I don't think you can bank on, hey, we have $50 million burning a hole in our pockets. We're going to get a max player. First of all, a lot of the max players that would be available are going to be older players that are in their 30s and maybe not the same version. Like, look at James Harden right now with the Sixers. Like, you want that version of Dame? Now, I think Dame keeps himself in better shape than James Harden does. But you have to make a decision on, okay, is this the type of player that we want to keep our options open for, or would they even consider signing? Or do you say, listen, cap space is more going to be for absorbing a player's contract via trade or for signing sort of, complementary players in free agency. So Miles Turner is a guy, for instance, that there's been a lot of rumors about the Timberwolves potentially trading for him as a big man and a guy that can slide in and play next to Cat. So that's the type of move I would entertain to be better this year and next year, because he comes off the books after the 2022-23. I guess it would just be 1 year. Like, if you could find a way to swap D'Lo in a trade for Miles Turner, do I think the Wolves would be better with Miles Turner and, let's say, a combination of Jordan McLaughlin and, Patrick Beverley at point guard than they would if they had D'Lo and some slappy backup big man? Yeah, like I would explore moves like that for the short term. But I like the idea of keeping financial options open for next summer.
Absolutely.
So, something to keep an eye on.
Yes, I think that is a good call.
It's fun talking relevant Timberwolves basketball on this show. People have been asking, when you guys got Judd's hockey show. Yeah. When are you going to launch your Wolves spinoff? And we're trying to take some baby steps here at Score North. We don't want to get out over our skis as we build Mackie and Judd, Purple Daily, and Judd's hockey show, but it's definitely on our radar. So if you guys have suggestions of, who would you like to see on a Wolves show with one of us knuckleheads, or maybe just without us, hit us up. Just throw some recommendations. Who would you want to hear talking Wolves on Score North? Just let us know. Can't guarantee we're going to take your suggestions to the bank, but we'd love to hear from you.
Karl-Anthony Towns and Ant Edwards every week talking Wolves.
All right, let's get back here with some write that down predictions and an accountability session. Mackie and Judd.